Evening, everyone, and welcome to a Balls and Brew special. And as you can see, very delighted to say I am joined by ex-United striker and all-round good bloke, making his Balls Out podcast debut because it's the first time he's been on in this new format. But I'm joined by Phil Marsh. Phil, how are you, mate? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be back on, mate. As I say, we've not spoke for quite a while, but yeah, looking forward to having a catch up and a chat. Everything's all good, my end, mate. Yeah, so looking forward to a good catch up.
Yeah, really good, mate. Really good to have you on. Yeah, we've spoken in the previous format of the podcast. Obviously, it's had a few changes and a few makeovers over the time, but the last time we spoke, it was the day of Ten Hag's sacking, and we were talking about Rude taking over in the interim. And then since then, we haven't had a chance to speak. So we'll kick straight into it and go straight into. We'll probably start with United on the field. What do you make of sort of Ruben Amorim at the moment? Is he the coach that you sort of wanted at the time, or what are your thoughts about Ruben Amorim himself?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was pretty optimistic, as I'm sure most United fans were, when obviously he was linked with the job, and obviously the job he'd done at Sporting. He'd done really well there, and I think United fans knew the sort of style of football that he likes to play, probably with the calibre and the sort of players that we have currently, was never going to sort of fit and sort of, hit the ground running, if you like. So for me, I sort of still think he's probably the right man to take us forward. And obviously, that formation and that style that he wants to play in the long term will probably, turn out being a successful style and system. However, I do think, even though we know he said he didn't want the job until sort of in the summer, I am a little bit disappointed in him that he's not sort of, changed his approach a little bit and sort of looked at what we've got in the squad and sort of changed it up a little bit to sort of, just on a short term basis, really. I think with the players that we've got, for me, I would like to have seen him, change it up a little bit and sort of play a different style. And that's basically just to, get us a bit better and harder to beat, have a few more, hopefully, positive results. At the minute, it just looks like we're sort of fitting, square pegs in round holes, and the performances are nowhere near good enough. It's individual moments of brilliance that are having to, happen for us to get anything out of games. There's no real fluidity in our play. There's no structure. There's no sort of cohesion within the group. So I think until now, in the end of the season, we know now that he's never going to change the sort of way that he's going to set up. And, fair play to him for that. I think, stick to his guns, and, I like that about him. But I think, obviously, with the amount of pressure that you've got on you, and the sort of microscope's always on, Man United, wherever and whatever they're doing. So for me, I would have liked to have seen him maybe just tweak things up a little bit to try and help him, really, and take a little bit of pressure off.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I've said for weeks on shows that I like the style of play he wants to play. I just, like you just said there perfectly, is it's square pegs and round holes. The players that we've got available, and we're relying so much on people like Fernandes and the new signings, especially Patrick Dorgu was very good over the weekend against Everton. Probably the only really good outstanding player on the pitch. Obviously, Ugarte is now back from injury, so you'd like to think that these are players that are going to fit that system. But I did actually have a question from one of our regulars, and he wanted to get your opinion on it, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So this is Mark, evening Mark, if you're watching. And he said, could you please ask Phil about Rasmus? Rasmus has to do more in front of goal, but do you think it is made harder for him because it seems he never knows when the ball will come into the box?
Yeah, 100%. I think I've talked about this numerous times when I've been on podcasts and asked about Hoyland and Xerxes and stuff like that. I think, firstly, I do feel for him in a little way, that because the service that they're getting at the moment is not great, and obviously the quality. And obviously, when I was back at the club, you look at the wingers and the type of football that we played back then, the strikers knew exactly what was going to happen: touch out your feet, deliver, overlapping, get balls into the box. Now, I think because of the football, the way the game's changed, everybody's cutting inside and sort of keeping the ball and trying to score the perfect goal. So I think in that respect, I think he's a little bit sort of you can give him a little bit of leeway, let's say, with that because it is more difficult for the modern day strikers now. Not knowing when the ball's going to be coming into the box because as a centre forward, the timing of that runs, it's got to be perfect really. You've got to put yourself in a position where if that ball does come into the box, you can get on the end of it, or if it breaks in the box, kind of be sniffing around for a second ball or a tap in. And I think he's at the point at the moment now where he's probably got that frustrated with making runs not coming in, and sort of all that kind of thing that he's sort of just banging his head against the brick wall, if you like. But on the flip side of that, I think he needs to be doing a lot more in terms of for himself. As a striker, you've got to want to get on the ball. He looks a little bit disinterested. I think going back 6 months, although he was still like a rough diamond and he had a lot of faults within his game, he looked like he had a lot of work rate and his effort and all that kind of stuff was still there. He's not the greatest in terms of holding a ball in, and his touch can be a little bit rusty at times. But what I liked about him, sort of say 6 months ago, was he was still quite tenacious. He wanted to have a little bit of a battle. He'd put his body in, he'd chase back. I think now we've sort of seen in the last couple of months, certainly, that he's lost that little bit of edge to his game, even sort of, the work rate, which is the bare minimum, really. And obviously that comes with confidence, I think, which is a massive part of being a striker. Obviously not scoring in 16 games is going to have a massive effect on anybody, let alone Man United's central striker, which gets even more scrutiny. So, yeah, it's obviously a massive, position to play, and you've got a lot of eyes on you. I think he was thrown in the deep end, obviously, when he first signed, and there wasn't really anybody else to take a little bit of pressure off him and learn from, with maybe a bit of an older statesman who could give him, a little bit of help on the training ground and just to sort of take a bit of that, pressure off him. But yeah, I'm really struggling with him at the moment. I think he's not doing enough. He's not working hard enough, and obviously he's not scoring goals, which is a massive part of what a centre forward needs to do. So I think that's a massive reason again why we are struggling. Yeah, the chances aren't coming, and maybe he can point fingers and say that he's not getting enough service and quality balls, but that's where the top players come to the fore and make things happen and go looking for the ball and at least put in the effort and the work rate that you need that should at least give the fans something to sort of hope and hold on to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you said it there, and I think we've spoken about this in the past, is that the older statesmen just aren't at the club anymore. We've got a real lack of leadership. We go back to like when you were saying back in the team that you had around you when you were sort of coming up, you had the players like Keane and Neville and Scholes, Giggsy, all to look up to. So you had those older statements. You had the people setting the standards, making sure you were training as you should every day on the field. And it just doesn't happen at United at the moment. You think back, probably the most recent you could probably say, other than Fernandes, but even then, sometimes his attitude isn't really what you would expect from a Manchester United captain. But probably you can look at players like Cavani, who put everything they wanted out on the pitch to get the goals. Ibrahimovic as well, but from a slightly different point of view. And then you're probably even going further back to people like Wazza, and then it's Rio and Vidic times. So that's got to be a real issue, especially in that dressing room at the moment with a lot of young kids, and especially the benches. They've been full of real young talent, and they just haven't got the people to look up to at the minute.
No, that's been a massive problem for probably the last 5-6 years at least, with not having them real leaders and the characters within the dressing room to make sure that the standards are kept high. The training is sort of high standards. Everyone doesn't seem to me, and obviously we've talked about this many a time, but doesn't seem to me like the intensity and stuff in training's there because if you're training all week and you've got that winning mentality and that every ball counts, then when you come to a Saturday, you don't even have to think about it. It just sort of it just becomes second nature. Whereas at the moment, it looks like all the players have got the weight of the world on the shoulders when they're coming out, and you can see it with the performances that the pressure they're under, and sort of people making stupid mistakes and not wanting to take a chance. I always, believe, when you play for Manchester United, you've got to be able to go out and express yourself. You've got to take risks. You've got to obviously, try and play attractive and good football. Whereas now it just looks like everybody's looking around to say who's going to be the person that pulls us out the crap. And obviously everyone's, really scared of making mistakes, because that just then ramps more pressure and more, criticism towards the group. And for me, if you're going out with that mentality and that attitude, you've basically lost before you've even kicked the ball, which is a sad state of affairs. But that's, to me, when I watch United. Obviously, I've watched them for many years at the moment. When I sort of look at the performances and before a game, I'm not knowing what to expect from one week to the next. I'm not thinking, I'm not having any optimism or belief that, any of these players can go and deliver and put on a good performance for like 3 or 4 games in a row. It might be, one player has a good game and then he has 3 bad games. It's just everything is, up in the air at the moment, and it's not a good place to be in at the moment. I think obviously there's a lot of noise around the club. There's a lot of things going on and off the pitch that isn't good. And it's just, it's just, you can see it's just manifesting, and everybody's sort of getting swept in. It's like a black hole. It's just sucking everything in at the moment.
Yeah, and we'll go straight into that, obviously, like you say. So, obviously, it announced today that Jim Ratcliffe's been out again and making statements, and I mean, some of these people that are being made redundant, Phil, there's a good chance that some of them were at the club when you were, because that's the longevity of the club that have been working there. There's a good chance that a lot of these redundancies are probably people that you've probably spoken to or knew back then. But so it came out today, obviously, in a statement on Monday, the club confirmed that another 150 to 200 jobs would be made redundant. On top of that, also for non-playing staff at United, TalkSport understands that their lunch options at Carrington Canteen have been reduced to just soup and sandwiches. I'll get your take on that straight away, Phil. I mean, it's got to be the most ridiculous set of circumstances to be in at that club at the minute in that background situation.
That is like really extreme, and to think of a club like Manchester United with the facilities at the training ground that they've got to now being told that the players are being put on rations and there's all these redundancies is shocking. As you say, like I'm not in a position where I think that there probably should be a couple of redundancies. Like I'm all for if someone comes in and they have fresh ideas and they see people who's probably not been pulling the weight, or something needs freshening up. I'm all for that, I think. But to go in and just sort of basically throw a blanket over everyone and basically just tarnish everyone basically with the same brush, it seems to be like what they've done. And get rid of some of these real stalwart people who've been there from, probably before even I was there. Do you know what I mean? They've been part of the furniture of the club that have seen so many great years of success and been part of the club's history. These people mean a lot to the club, and people who aren't actually, involved and see what goes on the day-to-day stuff. The massive, massive parts of, making the machine and the cogs turn. It's a shame because, now, it's basically starting afresh. Everything's, probably going to be a lot different to what it was when I was there. Like, obviously, the food situation. Like, I used to love going into training. You'd go in the morning, you'd have breakfast, you'd train, and then you'd go up for lunch and you'd sit with all the lads and the staff, and everyone would be a big family, and there'd be 2 or 3 different options of food. It'd cater for everyone. Everyone enjoyed and had a great sort of relationship and rapport. Whereas now, obviously, I've not been in the most recent times, but I can't imagine that family atmosphere is the same at this moment in time, because everything just seems like it's being scrapped and sort of started again. So it is maybe something that needed to be addressed, but I don't think it needed to be sort of as much as what's happened. And I think this then again is even more of a setback in terms of like when you look at where Man United want to be and obviously where they are and how long projected time frame is to sort of get there, I think this sets us back again even further. Never mind on the pitch. I think you've got to have everything else in place off the pitch in order for everything to run smoothly. And this now is probably going to have a massive knock on effect, and probably set us back another few years at least.
Yeah, and we spoke about Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe last night on Talk of the League, but when obviously the club was put up for sale by the Glazers, and we had supposedly had that Saudi consortium wanting to buy 100% of the club, and everyone was umming and ahhing about the sort of human rights situation. But then you had Jim Ratcliffe come out and say, I want to buy the club, and we all sort of said, this is it, this is our saviour of Manchester United. We wanted the Glazers out, and then it sort of turned, and he ended up, as Mark said beautifully on the show last night, it was a deal with the devil to keep the Glazers in place. And obviously these changes at club level aren't just Jim Ratcliffe. There has got to be an influence from the Glazer family still involved. But what did you make of, like I say, like Jim Ratcliffe initially saying he wanted to buy the club and then making that deal with the devil?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, mate, I had the exact same opinion, really. That I was happy, when Jim Ratcliffe sort of, got it, because I was thinking, he's a Manchester United fan. He's obviously followed the club for a long time, and I thought he was going to be the person that was going to, come in and sort of reignite, United, and try and get us back to where we wanted to be. But obviously, it's not turned out that way, and we've seen now in the press that Glazers are saying that they're adamant about not selling. So, that's another sort of nail into the coffin that United fans have sort of not wanted to hear and sort of read about. But yeah, again, you look at when that obviously everyone would say oil money and that, but they would have cleared the debt, and we would have been in a far better position, and sort of looking forward and having that optimism about even though we probably still wouldn't be in a position to be challenging, we'd have been a lot further ahead than obviously where we
Yeah,
got.
the infrastructure would have been being put in
Yeah,
place straight away. Yeah.
and yeah, I think obviously we've probably all had the wool pulled over our eyes a little bit with false promises and what could have been. But again, it doesn't surprise you, because with United at the moment, it just seems like everything it goes from bad to worse, and everything that we touch seems to just go down the toilet. So yeah, obviously it's not an ideal situation, it's not an ideal position, but you've still got to keep believing and keep hoping that we are in for some good luck and something good to happen, because United fans are probably some of the best fans in the world. The amount of support they do, the money they spend to follow the club up and down the country, win, lose or draw, they're always there in the numbers, and they deserve so much more. And that doesn't necessarily mean just winning trophies again. It just means players playing for the shirt, showing a little bit more, giving a little bit back, and obviously the owners now need to listen and sort of start trying to get in place and sort of listen to what the fans of the club who have followed them and know what we want to try and get us back to where we want to be. But again, it's all changed, because it's a business at the end of the day now, and these men are selfish, and they will use it for their own commodities.
Yeah, and like you say, there we have got some of the best fans in the world, if not the best. The support that those away fans gave against Everton at the weekend, even though it was appalling and the
Yeah,
performance was woeful, you could still hear them, and they were brilliant. But yeah, I'm in the same position as you when it comes to watching United. I do have a sense of trepidation every time we watch them. There's not really a sense of excitement watching them. I'm a bit more excited maybe in the Europa League and the FA Cup, because that genuinely gives us opportunities for European football next year. But I've said many times this season, I'm pretty bored of watching United in the league at the minute, because it's just I'm sort of clocking out on the league position, because I don't really care where we finish as long as we stay in the Premier League and have some sense of European football. But I suppose relegation, there is an element of it. It will happen if the numbers keep dropping, and we were lucky in that. I mean, that penalty decision at the end of the Everton game, we had a good chat on that last night. On we were very lucky. I don't know where you stand on it. what were your thoughts on that VAR decision?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think for me, if that's your team, you're absolutely pulling your hair out that that's not being given.
Mm.
And obviously, when I seen it in real time, I thought it was a penalty. And when I seen the replay, I still, as a striker, I think I'm always probably a little bit biased towards like the attacking team, even though it was against us. I would have probably still said it probably still would have been a penalty. Um, so we definitely got away with that one, and obviously come away with a point. But yeah, the performance was shocking. I mean, for 60, 65 minutes, it was an absolutely abysmal, dreadful performance. There was nothing. There was no, energy. There was no creativity. Other than, as you say, Dorgu, who looked like he, had a little bit about him on the weekend. But other than that, it was just so flat, and it just looked like players going through the motions. Um, and it really annoys me and frustrates me that it takes a goal or something to sort of spark that little bit of, because as soon as the goal went in, obviously the performance then started you know to be a little bit better, and you could see players wanting to get on the ball and having a little bit more. And I just can't get my head around how you can't start a game off like that, and just you're playing for Man United at the end of the day. You're playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world, and you're just going through the motions. And it takes something like a goal in the 65th minute to start to spark a little bit of interest and enthusiasm. Yeah, just it's not good, mate. It's not.
Yeah, we had no right to score. We had no right to take a point, but I would have taken a point at the start of the game. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
happens.
definitely. Yeah.
Jonathan's put a question here. Is the club salvageable, or is it too late? Are we gone point to point of no return? Could we end up in an administration? I think what he's saying is obviously with the amount of redundancies and the amount of cost cutting that they're doing, they're obviously looking at the fact that they could end up in a real financial situation. Do you think it will ever get to that point, or would they probably end up selling the club before they got to that point?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'd be very, very surprised if we got to that sort of situation without the owners selling up. I mean, I would never say never at the moment with what's going on at the club, and the amount of things that have gone wrong in the last few years. But no, I don't think that we'd ever get to that position. I would hope not anyway. And yeah, as I said, I think these guys who are in charge are far too selfish. I think to let it get to a position that I think they'd jump ship if there was a possibility of that happening. But yeah, good question, and sort of something that could be a possibility, because you're looking at all these cost cutting activities that are going on in the background, and obviously there's no smoke without fire, so there must be something going on in the background that probably we don't know about in terms of the finances. But yeah, it's a shame as well, because you were going to get to a position probably where we're going to have to start selling, some of the homegrown players, your Mainus or Garnacho, or obviously Rashford if he ends up going to Villa or whatever. Um, and you've got all these other players who are on big contracts who are just, doing nothing, and sort of on ridiculous salaries. Um, and I think that's the biggest thing, really. That's the most frustrating thing for fans and for people looking at it from an outside point of view. You're making cost cutting measures against people who aren't on probably massive salaries, who are integral to the club's history, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got players who are just basically taking the piss, sat on 250, 300 grand a week, injured one week, can't be asked the next week, strolling. And I think that's where the majority of the frustration comes from the supporters, because, it's blatant from, our point of view, what needs to change and what needs to be sort of, the cost cutting if we're going to do it the right way. But as I say, it's difficult, because once you put players on 4 or 5 year contracts, you struggle to get rid of them then. And then obviously it's about contract negotiations, because it's one thing saying, "Oh, get rid of him." It's about then can you arrange a deal, and obviously can you make the other clubs come to an agreement to pay the salaries. And it's just a car crash really, which is why I've always said I don't see the benefit in putting players on longer than sort of like a 3-year contract. I mean, if you put in a player on a 5, 6, I mean, like Haaland and stuff now, 10-year contracts, like that's to me, I just don't get it. I just can't get my head around it. I just, you know, it's just absolutely crazy in my head that someone can be given a contract for that long. And then, if something goes wrong, they have to then honour that contract for that duration without, any fallbacks. So,
Well, yeah, you meant straight away the first player that comes into mind at the minute is Casemiro.
yeah,
I mean, he signed, I think it was a 3 or 4 year deal, something like 300 to 350 grand a week. And he's pretty much come out and said that he wants to stay at the club. Well, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to sit around and do the bare minimum? Because he was amazing for that first season, and we were all really happy with what he was doing. But
yeah,
that's another one of those players that we said about earlier, like leadership. That he's been there, done it. He's won the lot pretty
yeah,
much, and he's just not jumping up at the chance to sort of lead this club in the direction. And even with the rumours of sort of like Saudi Arabia taking him on the MLS potentially, just doesn't seem to happen. And I think
no.
I looked at it earlier. He could end up walking away from Man United after his contract's up at 18 million quid.
That's what I mean. It's ridiculous. And what you've got to think as well is now is that um, the appetite as well from like the younger players, like some of these, like obviously, don't want to keep harping on about when I was at the club, but obviously when I was sniffing around the first team and getting opportunities to train with them, and obviously made my debut and stuff. I was on nowhere near the amount of money, some of
Mm,
the first team players are on, because I hadn't done anything in the game. Basically, I was in the reserves, I was doing well, I was like a prospect coming up, but I got that little sniff of playing in the first team, and you get that win bonus and you get the appearance money, and you think, wow, this is like unbelievable. I want another sniff. I want a taste of that again. Whereas now you're seeing, players at 16, 17, 18 being given, ridiculous contracts on thousands of pounds a week, and they've not even kicked the ball yet in the first team. So you're setting them up to fail before they've even done anything, because you're giving them everything that they probably wanted from obviously, the financial side, which then gives extra distractions. And once you've got that security of like a 3-4 year contract on big money, you
mm,
know so I'm not saying every player, because I don't want to say that every player has that mindset, but especially in the modern day, because there's so much else going on around football, and like there's other things going on outside of football, sorry, like businesses, and they've got all these like social media things. Players can take their eye off the job. The job is be a professional footballer. It seems to me when I watch and when I look that people don't really care whether they win, whether they lose, whether after a game if they played poorly. Oh well, it doesn't seem to hurt them like it did when I was at the club. If we lost that game of football, that was your whole weekend was ruined. You that was it. It was like all doom and gloom. But my point being is, a lot of the clubs now are giving these young players massive contracts before they've even done anything, and then that basically is saying to them like, yeah, you've sort of made it, and you're going to be part. But then the player then can sort of, oh well, I'm comfortable now. I can just
mm.
relax. I can sit back. I don't have to, do everything that I was doing before I got my contract. Now I can just take the shackles off and sit back and relax. But that's really when the hard work should be starting, and it has the adverse effect. If you give somebody, everything all at once before they've done everything, you've defeated the object. I always say the contract should be incentivized, like in terms of, give someone, a 2-3 year contract, that's fine. Your money's what it is, but then I would make the contracts more bonus based. If you hit so many appearances and this season, if you score this many goals, if you make this many assists, if you can set little targets, between players depending on what positions they are. Obviously, defenders would be, clean sheets or whatever it may be. Attackers would be goals and assists. Midfielders might be, assists or whatever else. You might come up with little bespoke ones for different players, and that way you're always keeping the players on the toes. You're always striving for more, striving for them to improve and get better. Um, but yeah, that was just my point I wanted to make on the sort of, and again, you look at the situation with the financial situation now. Look at how many players we've paid over the odds for over the years. Look at how many players we've brought in on massive contracts who've probably, lasted a year or two, and then we've wanted to get rid of them, and now they're out on loan or they're, doing whatever. So much money that we've wasted, and we're not talking about, a couple of million. We're talking, hundreds of millions of pounds in wages and sort of, you know, um, transfer fees.
Yeah, no, I couldn't. Yeah, absolutely, and the idea of players like Rashford now going out on loan, maybe paying the majority of his wage, Villa might be, but there's still an element of he's still earned a lot of money for doing very little at United in the last sort of year and a half. And then you've got players like Casemiro who are quite happy to take the 18 million over the next year and a half to finish up his contract. And then you've got players like Anthony who were just pretty woeful United shirt. Yeah, admittedly, it's La Liga. It's a slightly different taste of football, but he's absolutely smashing it out there. He's had like 3 or 4 man in the match appearances and absolutely doing wonders for United. I think it's Real Betis, isn't
Yeah,
it?
looks like he's enjoying his football. I think
Which is all we've ever asked him to do.
Yeah, and it's strange because I even look at Rashford now. He looks like he's enjoying his football, but I mean, why can't you enjoy your football playing for Manchester United? Yeah, I get it. There's more pressure. The team's in a bad place at the moment, but surely as a player, as an individual, you'd want to be the person that stands up and tries to turn the club's fortunes around, and especially someone like Rashford who's come through the system, who's been there majority of his life, and knows what it means to play for Manchester United. It's really disappointed me that some of these players have gone away and sort of now look like they've got the spring in the step, and they want to run, and they want to do the things that we know they was capable of, but just didn't seem like they could be bothered when he was at United in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. So yeah, it's a weird one, mate. As I say, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and we don't know all the ins and outs and reasons why. Um, but again, for me, from a personal standpoint, as a player, as a person, when you walk over that white line, you're not just representing Manchester United, you're representing yourself as well. And if you have the attitude of, oh, I can't be bothered, and oh, I don't want to put the effort in today, it only reflects badly on yourself. And then, when it does come to the point of, all right, I need to go somewhere else, if you haven't been putting the effort in and putting the, performances and the work rate in, people aren't going to want to take you. Do you know what I mean? And that's just, you should always have that personal pride, regardless whether, you don't agree with what the manager's tactics are, or you fell out with somebody or whatever, because that all happens. That's part of, being a footballer, part and parcel. All these little different things that go on in the background. When you walk over that white line, you've got to, forget all that and, give everything, because otherwise you're just cheating everybody. You're cheating yourself, cheating the fans, and it's not acceptable for any level of football, let alone Manchester United.
Yeah, and Jonathan makes a really good question on the back of your incentivising on player contracts. Could we potentially introduce a pay-as-you-play clause to future contracts so that players stop receiving a wage if they miss a large period for injury? And players like Shaw and Mason Mount spring to mind, especially Luke Shaw, who's obviously been out for a long period of time with injury, came back and he's gone back off injured again. And then players like Mason Mount, who's probably only played, 10, 15 matches for Manchester United, and just hasn't really able to do it. So what would you sort of say to that? So obviously giving players the benefit of the doubt that if they miss, let's say, half a season through injury, surely they should be getting half the wages for that season.
Yeah, and that's another sort of point I was trying to make with some of the players now, obviously on massive contracts, massive wages, and they're not in a rush to get back. Like they can they can come back whenever they please, because the wages are still going to be coming in every single week, and it won't affect what they're picking up in the wage slip. So again, when I was talking about the incentivised things, that could happen in loads of different facets. Like obviously injuries come into it. Your bonuses, you can sort of say, like it's always been a thing, but like, if the club before the start of the season, if we finish in this position, or if we win this, or if you go, these are all ways I think that clubs should be looking at in terms of like from a financial situation, and sort of when you negotiating contracts to sort of keep the players on the toes, because if you're just giving a player a 5-year contract and he comes in and doesn't really do much in his first season, and then he's injured for the next, say, 2 seasons. You've basically paid him, 3 years worth of wages, which is going to be millions of pounds, and he's not done nothing. And from in any other job, in any other sort of industry, if you're paying somebody, top dollar, they need to be delivering, every week. They need to be delivering the results. They need to be, performing to that standard that you've paid them that money for. In football, that's not the case, because regardless whether they're good, bad, or indifferent or injured, they're always going to be picking up that amount of money. So I just think, and I don't know whether, I'm not as up to date on all the, contract situations and agents and all that, side of things now, whether, clubs have got the power to be able to do something like that. But I just think, the amount of power players have got now, and obviously the way the game's gone, it's too heavy in favour of the player for me. I think the clubs are being like strung out to dry, really. So yeah, there needs to be something, I think, that you put in place, because a lot of these players are just taking the Mickey,
Yeah.
to put it bluntly.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's a shame to see so many players really just not caring to get back, and just not really the sense of wearing a United shirt, the pride of we being a Manchester United player, just does seem to be wearing away for some players, that's for sure. We're running out of time, but I really wanted to do. We will definitely get you back on to do a lot of talk
Yeah,
about non-league football, absolutely. But I wanted to play a little game very quickly. Keep or sell on basically the starting 11 from the United game. So I'll take you through it, and you give me, would you keep him or would you sell him? And be as brutal as you want or as honest as you want, because we love that sort of thing. So obviously we'll start and go with Andre Onana.
um, I
I
think.
can I can chuck a last chance option in there as well if you want.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna say I think for him, because he's probably still only sort of a relatively new signing in terms of, he's not had, a massive amount of time. I'd probably say he's on his last chance. I think, there's too many mistakes that he's made, for my liking. I get a little bit nervous every time he gets on the ball, if I'm honest, as well. He takes a little bit too long for me when he's trying to play out. But yeah, I think sometimes you can see, and he makes really good saves. He'll make a really good save, but then, the same token, he's made so many bad errors. It sort of counteracts that. And as a keeper, you just want somebody who's consistent, who you can sort of trust. And obviously, if they're good with the feet as well, that's a bonus. But yeah, he's definitely on his last chance, I'd say. I'd be, if I had to pick keep or sell, I'd be more inclined to say uh, keep, but only on the basis that, we've only got, Tom Eaton and Binder at the moment, who are, I think we definitely need to get a top class keeper. You look at the best teams in world football at the moment; they've all got a top class goalkeeper in net who can, command the box, make big saves, reliable. Um, and yeah, we definitely haven't got that at the moment.
a name that came up last night when we were talking about Onana was Aaron Ramsdale at Southampton. You think they've got a minus 42 goal difference, but it could have easily been minus 90. But with him in the sticks, that's the sort of player I would have imagined when obviously Raya came in at Arsenal. We probably should have been tapping up and saying,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want to play first team football, you come up to Manchester United.
yeah, yeah, and he's got the Premier League experience, which for me, um, is what we need to be aiming at. Not just in net. In all our positions now. When we're recruiting and bringing transfers in, I think you need proven Premier League experience, because we've seen it so many times. Bringing players in from the Dutch league or the Spanish league or wherever. Some of these players, can't find their feet in the Premier League, and it takes 18 months before you start seeing any sort of real form, and we can't afford to really wait for that amount of time at the moment with where we are. So yeah, that's just another thing I would sort of be looking at if I was recruiting. Players who have been doing it week in week out in the Premier League.
Yeah, so I'll give you the back three that we had. So we had Nusa Mazraoui, Harry Maguire and Matthias de Ligt. What's your thoughts on those three at the back?
I think Mazraoui's been a decent signing. I do like him. I think for what we paid for him. I think once we got a couple of better players, and obviously the team was playing a little bit more uh, confidence and stuff like that, I think he would be a good addition and a good player. So I'd keep Mazraoui. I think he's been one of our better players. I think Maguire, although I do like Maguire, I think he's had a lot of challenging moments in a Manchester United shirt. I do think he, on his days, he's a decent defender. But again, when I look at mistakes and obviously his pace now probably coming towards the last stages of his sort of top peak years, I'd probably move him on now and try and get some money for him. Delict, yeah, again, I'd probably keep him just on the basis that he's a relatively new addition to the squad. I think he's done okay. I think again he'd probably benefit if we was a little bit stronger in the spine of the team and had a little bit more experience and sort of was playing a little bit better. I think in them defensive positions at the moment we've been getting really exposed and overrun because everything's just been too disjointed in front of him and the formation, as I said before, square pegs in round holes. So we've just not been as as um, as stable as we should be. So yeah, I'd keep the two and get rid of Maguire probably.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I'll probably agree with you, to be fair. So the two wing backs that we had were Diogo Dallo and Patrick Dorgu.
Well, I'd keep Dorgu. Obviously, he's one for the future. I think he's only just came into the club, so still early days for him. But I think I've liked what I've seen in terms of his energy and his work rate, and he looks like he's got a bit of quality on the ball. But again, it's going to take a little bit of time for him to find his feet. And again, playing in a poor side at the moment, it's not going to you know be a smooth transition, let's say. So yeah, I'd definitely keep him. Dallo, um, again, he's another player where I think he'd be a good squad player. I don't think he's probably the answer in terms of playing every single week and to sort of take us to that next level. I don't probably think he would be the answer in terms of like if we was going to be challenging. But I think I like his attitude. He always seems to work hard and put a shift in. Um, so I'd keep him and sort of use him as a squad player because he can play. He's quite versatile as well. He can play left and right. So I'd keep him.
Would you, when the obviously when we sold Wan-Bissaka, would you have preferred it the other way around? Would you have preferred to have kept Wan-Bissaka and then sold Dallo, or
Um, I don't know. Yeah, I think Wan-Bissaka for me in a United shirt never really did that much wrong. I just think because of the way he obviously wanted to play, and obviously Wan-Bissaka's attributes probably going forward was never his main strength. He was a brilliant 1v1 defender, um, and very consistent for me. But yeah, I just think because of the way we sort of wanted to play and set up, he just fell out of favour. And for his own benefit, really, because he definitely should be playing in the Premier League. He's too good to be just sat on a bench, or if he's not going to be involved. I was a little bit disappointed, really, that we let him go. I genuinely liked Wan-Bissaka, and gradually, over time, he was improving a little bit going forward. He was never going to be, you know, like a Trent or somebody who was whipping balls in from like deep and dictating the game from right back. But we've seen him since he's gone to West Ham. At the weekend he set the goal up for Bowen. He's looked solid. Playing in that right back position for West Ham. And if you asked wingers in the Premier League, probably who do you not want to come up against in terms of like in a duel, I'd say Wan-Bissaka's probably the first name that you'd say because he's 1v1 defending's brilliant.
yeah, yeah? I've always been a fan believer that if you might be really good going forward, but you need to have the basics down first. And if you want a right wing back that wants to defend and attack, knuckle down on the defensive side of it first. So, yeah, Wan-Bissaka for me was probably at one point one of the best one-on-one defenders in the league. So,
Yeah,
to have really that argument between sort of Dallo and Wan-Bissaka, I'm probably with you. I probably would have. I understand what you mean with sort of Dallo as a sort of squad player, but if I had the choice at the summer whether to sell Dallo or Wan-Bissaka, I probably would have kept Wan-Bissaka, to be honest. Because,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
defensively, really good. Obviously, going forward, but again, get the basics, do your first job right, and then everything else falls into place afterwards. We had a midfield two, and we've already spoken quite a bit about Casemiro, but it was Casemiro and Manuel Ugarte.
Yeah. Well, in an ideal world, you'd get rid of Casemiro now. I think he's been a great player in his career. Had a really good career in his first season at United. He did really well. But obviously now, I think we're at a point where his best years are behind him, and the Premier League, the speed and stuff of the game is probably just too much for him now. So I'd definitely move him on, even though I know it's easier said than done because we've shot ourselves in the foot again with giving him a massive contract on massive money. So it's going to be difficult to get rid of him. But yeah, for the answer to this quiz like type of thing, I'd get rid of him and I'd keep Ugarte. I think obviously he's been probably again one of our better signings in recent times. I think he's decent on the ball. He gets around the pitch. He's got legs which you definitely need in the middle of midfield in the Premier League. Um, and hopefully as time goes on, he'll sort of gradually get a little bit better and start to climatise a little bit more to the English game.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, like we've said, Casemiro probably, in an ideal world, needs to be moved on now, and that will certainly release that ridiculous amount of wages. And Agate, for me, he's getting there. Played particularly quite well in sort of like that last third of the game against Everton, and obviously had a really good goal. But yeah, no, I'm exactly the same as you. We'll do Bruno Fernandes next. Obviously, came in the COVID year and was unbelievable. Not really what he was, but where do you sort of stand on Bruno Fernandes at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely keep Bruno. I think he's been probably our best signing that we've made in the last 6-7 years. I think he's been really consistent. The numbers that he's sort of racked up is really good in terms of the squads that he's played in. He's not had that much real world class quality around him throughout them years. So to still be delivering and picking up the numbers that he's getting is testament to himself. Yeah, there's really poor moments in terms of like some of the stuff he does. I don't like some of the antics and the sort of not the sulking, but like he sort of gets a little bit too animated and wound up sometimes. Which as the captain, you need to nip that in the bud a little bit and try and lead a little bit more by example. But in terms of his ability on the ball, you can't really question what he's done and obviously how he's performed. Yeah, he's had some bad games, as every player does. But I think overall, when you look at who's probably been United's best player, best signing in the last sort of 5-6 years, I think everyone would probably point towards Bruno and sort of say that he's been our sort of main man, if you like. So definitely keep him and hopefully, as I say, if we can start building a good team and bring some better additions into the squad. And as I say, in maybe the next couple of years, once we start playing a little bit more like the way Amarin wants to play, once he's got his players in, hopefully we'll see a better side of Bruno. And I think he plays, for me, he plays a lot better when he's in that deeper position. I think he's in the second half when he sort of dropped back a little bit, was getting more of the ball. Just had a bit more of an impact on the game for me, dictating and trying to, pick passes because I think that's a big part of his game. He likes to play them Hollywood balls in behind and sort of get us on the front foot. Yeah, sometimes when you're giving balls away or you're trying things, you're going to give the ball away and people can get frustrated. But what I say is, I'd rather somebody like Bruno trying to create something or trying to play forward than, just passing backwards and sideways all game and, going nowhere. So yeah, I'd definitely keep Bruno, and hopefully we can build and add some more quality around him to hopefully, make him even better.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And yeah, finally, we've got Joshua Xerxes and Rasmus Hoyland. Obviously, your position. What are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, I mean, I've, not been too complimentary of both. Obviously, being a former striker, and obviously, I watch them positions more than any other position when I watch a game of football. So I've been quite critical of both in the last sort of few months when I've watched games. Just Xerxes probably not had as much time and opportunities as Hoyland has. But I just think, when I watch Xerxes, he just doesn't strike me as, a Man United player. He just seems to stroll around. And I mean, when he comes on off the bench, he doesn't really seem to have much of an impact. I mean, he does have moments, don't get me wrong. And I think he probably could work well if we played in a different formation. I think if we played in like a 4-4-2 and he was maybe slightly deeper, um, that could potentially work, and I think he would probably be and show up a little bit better than what he has done. Um, but I just think from what I've seen so far, and obviously the output in terms of as a striker and attacker, when you look at the goals and assist columns and obviously that kind of stuff, both players are far short of where they should be and where we need to be. So yeah, difficult one really. I think both are sort of in positions where you sort of you don't know whether to sort of stick or twist with them, because although as a centre forward you need to be scoring goals and delivering every other game really when you're playing for a top club. Um, we do see little moments from him, and obviously the irony's still relatively young, so you maybe want to give him that little bit more of a benefit of the doubt. But no, I think to answer it bluntly, if it was me, I would probably get rid of both, and I'd be looking at bringing a real top quality striker in, because that's a massive part of winning football matches. Scoring the goals. You look at all the best teams, all the teams that are doing well currently. They've all got players that can stick the ball in the back of the net, or they've all got players who can make an impact and make that be that difference, be that game changer. And at the moment, we've not got that at all. It's everybody's looking around and hoping someone will come up with a moment of magic, and that's the only way we're really looking like scoring or getting anything from a game. So yeah, unfortunately, I would get rid of both. Although I do think there probably is a player in both of them in potentially time or in a different scenario. Maybe, I mean, maybe better for both of them if they went somewhere else and sort of played in a different team that might suit their game better. Do you know what I mean? I think at the moment, when you look at our setup and the sort of way that we're playing, for Hoyland, he's probably wanting balls in behind because that's his strength. He's quick. He wants to be running on towards the goal. He wants to be getting on the end of crosses. We don't cross the ball, and we don't really play them, intricate balls, so you're running through on goal. So you sort of nullifying all these strengths really. And Xerxes again, I think he could do a job as a 10, dropping in and playing with maybe another out and out number 9. But that's again not really how we're playing at the moment. So yeah.
No, honestly, mate, couldn't agree more. And it's brilliant insight to get from a former striker. What are you up to at the minute? Whereabouts are you? Are you coaching, or are you just chilling, or putting the feelers out? What are you up to at the minute?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I was doing before Chris. So before Christmas, I went in as interim manager of Stalybridge. Did like a few weeks there just to help out because they sacked their manager. So I went in and did that. Really enjoyed it. Got offered sort of to apply for the job permanently, but just had a few things going on, and obviously probably wasn't the right time in terms of like where I was at on a personal level to sort of go in. But yeah, just do it. I've got my own coaching business, which I've sort of been keep that ticking over. I do a lot this time of year, obviously when the weather's not as good, just during like school holidays and half terms. But then obviously that'll be picking up again in the coming weeks when it gets to spring and the weather starts getting a bit better. And yeah, I'm just I'm not chilling, but I'm looking. I am going to be looking, I think, to get back involved in the game somewhere in the probably next sort of 6 to 12 months, whether it's in a coaching capacity or whether it's an assistant manager role or a manager. It depends, obviously, what uh, you know comes out. I've had a couple of good offers, which are probably not on the table anymore. But I think if I sort of put my name in the hat that I was looking, I think I probably would get another couple of decent offers. So yeah, just sort of seeing what's about and just taking my time. As I say, I've played football for the last 25 years, like sort of semi-professionally and professionally. So just taking a bit of time off to spend a bit of time with the girls and the kids, and do other things that I've not probably been able to do when I was playing football every weekend and stuff. So, but yeah, looking at getting back into it probably in the next 6 to 12 months if something comes available that I think is a good challenge and something that would fit. So yeah, that's just where I'm at the moment.
No, brilliant, mate. Honestly, you're an absolute superstar, and I really appreciate your time every time we get an opportunity to talk. Your insight on United is brilliant, and obviously tales from back in the day, which you've got plenty, and we'll get you on again. We have to because some of the tales you've got from your old United days are brilliant. So
Yeah,
whoever's watching, stick around. We will get more shows with Phil on in the future. But for now, I really appreciate your time, Phil, and everyone that watching. Like, subscribe, go and follow Phil on Twitter. His link will be in the YouTube and Twitter hashtag and status. So yeah, jump over, give him a shout out. Brilliant to see. But yeah, Phil, really appreciate your time, mate, and we will see you all very soon.